Out of Australia, for the past 2 years, we have seen a lot of government overreach. Whether it's COVID apps that make you check in when called upon, or quarantine camps that will take you away when you have a positive test result. Is this over sensationalized? Is it the truth? I feel that it was a question worth asking, and it was certainly a great idea to get the landscape of what has been going on in Australia for the past 2 years. Canada is certainly without its issues, and we have our own never ending problems. But this is why, for today's episode, I will be joined by a very special guest, Mr. Gabriel Rossi, a comedian out of Victoria, Australia. Blah, 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 blah. 5, 4, 3. Out of Australia, for the past 2 years, we have seen a lot of government overreach. Whether it's COVID apps that make you check in when the government requests you to, or quarantine camps that haul you away if you have a positive test result. Is this true or over sensationalized? I feel that it's a question worth asking. It certainly would be great to have an insight from on the ground level as what has been happening in Australia. For today's episode, I will be joined by Mr. Gabriel Rossi, a comedian out of Victoria, Australia, who has been doing stand-up comedy since 1996. And aside from that, Gabriel has been creating political satire over the past 2 years on his TikTok, featuring his common sense rhetoric and dismantling nonsensical government policies. And so, without further ado, welcome to the Flow of Discourse. Everybody, and welcome to the Flow of Discourse, the show where we are going to have discussions that are not captured by the mainstream media. And once again, here I am with the very excellent Gabriel Rossi. Hello, Gabriel. How are you?
I'm well, thank you, sir.
So I'm very glad that you've decided to come on the show. There's been a lot of things that have come out of Australia to Canada. I think a big part of that is probably our news outlet, Rebel News, has come to Australia. So I felt there's much to be gained from having a conversation. And you're definitely very in tune with things in Australia based off of all of the content that you have produced. What's some of the landscape? If you could give like a general overview of how things have been in Australia to
Okay,
start with.
well, we'll start with it from a political sense. And
Mm-hmm.
the way Australia has been set up with the states is the federation is, for whatever reason, and I'm trying to give these in the least amount of words possible, the state premiers seem to have been let off the leash to do what they please. So they formed a national cabinet to, in their response to COVID, and they agreed at certain things. But then when push came to shove, the premiers of each state pretty much did whatever they wanted to do. And even though it went against national cabinet directives, apparently our constitution is written in such a way that when it comes to health orders, the states have the final say, which left the country very divided. States were closing borders off to each other, right? So you couldn't go interstate. And some of the premiers were just like cooked. They were just making rules, and they're still doing it to this day. So yes, it is pretty bad here, and it's also very disjointed, which is a good word, because like each state seems to have a different approach when it's supposed to be unified, and it wasn't. So it's a mess, basically.
Yeah, Canada has suffered much the same. Like we've had, I wouldn't say maybe border closures, but there's been the provinces have been shut off from each other in a lot of ways. One of the things that I found gravely concerning
Mm-hmm.
about Australia is hearing a lot about this COVID check-in application.
Mm-hmm.
Is this what's the story with that?
So you're supposed to QR code in whenever you're going to a shop or a restaurant, any outlet, and it also has your vaccination status attached to that. So, yeah, I mean, look, are we all doing it? Are they all checking it? I'll say short answer is no. So, the reality is that people are slowly but surely complying a little bit less each day. We're pretty fed up here.
That's really good to hear. So, despite what the common narrative was, we were told, or at least I have recollections of being told, that there was an app in Australia where if you don't check
No,
in
it
and
isn't that.
you have to show your face to the app to ask you where you are. Are you at home? Is that kind of
Man,
like
it's on my phone. It's right here, mate. See, but
so?
so
It's
like
just a
just to give you
vaccine passport, is what it is.
essentially.
Yeah.
So what it is, see, I'll tell you what I've done, right? So you have our federal healthcare scheme, which is called Medicare, right? So all your immunisation history, whatever it may be, whether it's COVID or even your past and medical history, it's all stored on your Medicare, the federal app. Yeah,
Hmm.
they've also got a state app that they want you to use to go around checking in. And of course, there's nothing compelling me transferring my Medicare information over to the state, so I refuse to do that because I don't want the state knowing my business. So
Of course.
I can still use the app to, like QR coding if I want to do that. And if it comes up that I'm not vaccinated on that app, because like if let's say I was vaccinated, right, for whatever,
Hmm.
I'm not. See, this is the thing. Before you go any further, Brendan,
Hmm.
I don't tell anyone whether I am or not. It's no
Of
one's
course,
business. It's nobody's
it's
business. But anyway,
nobody's business.
let's say I was vaccinated, but I didn't put the information across to my Victorian app, which they want you to do, right?
Hmm.
And I could go into a shop, say, and they would obviously QR code, and it would come up on their little whatever that he doesn't have the green tick, um, look, that 99 times out of 100, they probably wouldn't even know one way or the other because they're probably too busy doing what they do. But let's say I find that one person who goes, oh, it says here you don't have your vaccination status. Then I say, here's my Medicare app, there it is. If I had the vaccine. So that's what I implore other people in Australia to do. Don't put it on the state app because the states are abusing our information. So I give them as little as possible. And there's no law in place where I have to put it on there. They want you to, but I'm just going to refuse. It's another mandate, not a law. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
Ontario had the same thing where they had the government app,
mhm.
except they've done one more. So the government went ahead with the COVID pass, but then now they want your driver's license and health card number, which allows you to
Wow,
use our socialized medicine. So
wow.
they're making it the digital ID.
So
Um,
right now, you guys seem even further down the track than what we are. To be honest with you, what you're saying there, because there's no talk of linking licensing or anything like that at this stage. But who knows?
yeah.
Look, I personally think it's collapsing, but that's just me.
Well, I'm not happy about it, and I won't be downloading any government software
No, don't. Yeah.
on
And
anything.
just make sure your truck drivers do a good job this week, mate. Sounds like they're on track, mate.
Oh, we have quite the convoy. I've seen reports of convoys of trucks
Mm,
stretching 71 kilometers in length,
nice.
heading to our capital in Ottawa. I
Fantastic.
have some plans for that this weekend, so we will be checking in with people live in Ottawa
And
and
everyone
getting.
in Australia is watching this very closely, let me tell you.
That's good to hear. I've heard it said. I don't know if this is going to be accurate or not. I have lots of skepticisms about it. Um, but people are saying they haven't seen a movement like this since Terry Fox, who was a one-legged individual who tried to run across Canada, but failed due to cancer. So um, that started up a lot of our cancer charities that we see like around the
Okay.
world.
Yep.
So people are comparing it to his run across Canada. So I mean,
Oh,
it could be the run for the world too. I do hope that everybody behaves themselves, and that's my number one thing that I want. I want everybody to be well behaved. The goal here is peaceful non-compliance, and we don't need another January 6th incident like the United States had. Like
Yeah,
that,
that was blown right out of proportion too, though, don't you? Of
it,
course.
it it absolutely was, but we still don't need anything like
Yeah,
that.
it would only take one truck driver to use a cuss word, mate, and that would be it. Oh, look at these people. You know what I mean? That's it. So, to be
Yeah,
honest with you, there's a small part of me that, whilst I fully agree that peaceful non-compliance is the best, you know what? They're going to push back. So, what are we going to do? You know what I mean? So, if
yeah,
people are, if they're in their face, I have no problem with them lashing out. Especially, mate, this is a big deal. This is not just about vaccines and whatever. This
absolutely
is
not.
yeah, oh mate, we're well aware of that. So
Just
I almost, by any means necessary, that's almost where I'm going here. Not necessarily promoting violence at all, but certainly staunch vigil. Like you got to be vigilant without being
yeah.
violent. Yeah.
Well, a lot of these bad ideas. Uh, an individual I spoke to recently said a lot of these ideas we shouldn't even be giving oxygen to them
Yeah,
for them to
exactly.
breathe. Um, but I want to believe in Canada and I want to believe in Australia. We are
Yeah.
proud nations with similar histories.
Mm-hmm.
We've been to all the same wars,
Yep.
basically. Um,
Looks like we might be going to another one soon too, mate.
yeah, I. That's a whole rabbit hole. I'm not sure is going to be.
I
I
think
don't
it's.
know.
I think it might actually take the focus off COVID for a while. I might be happy about it, to be honest. Yeah, mate, at least something else to talk about. Like.
Well, yeah, I there is that. But Russia is a scary thing here. This is a little more than a toddler with a match, right? Like this is
Mhm.
nuclear
Oh yeah,
capabilities.
Russia is full on. But in saying that, um, you know, they don't get painted in the best light.
Yeah,
And I'm not suggesting that Putin is a good guy or anything like that, but I certainly think he's way more of a statesman than our leaders. I'll tell you now. So,
yeah,
from that point of view, I actually have a small amount of respect for him. Don't necessarily know the full ins and outs. I do understand, though. I've got some friends in the military here, and we've been talking about this. And
hmm
my understanding is, without going too deep into it, is that things in the Ukraine aren't great, and the
no,
Russian people are like, "Fix your stuff," and they're like, "We'll do what we want," and they're like, "Mate, come on, pull your head in," and they're sort of standing their ground. So now it's Putin's like, because there's obviously a lot of Russian interests in Ukraine, and you know, so I'm not, I don't think Putin is necessarily ready for an all-out war. He's just sitting there going, "Come on, fix your stuff. Let's get it sorted." And they're not, they're refusing. So I can kind of understand where they're coming from. Sounds like I side with them. I mean, no, I don't side with any of them. It is what it is. There's
but
always two sides.
I could certainly respect Vladimir Putin when he comes out and says these notions in the West where there was a reporter asking him in the West there's ideas where a man could be a woman and a woman could be a
Yeah,
man and a man could be a mama and a mom could be a dad and he just stamped it out right there. He's like these ideas are ludicrous and they have
mhm,
no place in Russia. And I was like, well,
look,
I could really go for that. I mean, his
look,
point was to
yeah,
each their own, but on the
yeah,
state level, a man is a man and a woman is a woman, and we're
yeah.
not doing that.
Look, I have trans friends who,
Yeah,
believe it or not, would actually side more with you than what you realise, because they are sick of the way they're sort of, look, these are genuine people who, for whatever reason, weren't comfortable in their body, wanted to change,
hmm
and they don't want to be swept up in some sort of movement. They just want to live their lives. And
yeah.
they distance themselves from anything LGBT completely. So yeah,
That
they're not trying to redefine gender. They're just living the way that they want to live. That's it.
that that's been my experience ultimately too, which
Yeah,
is kind
yeah,
of kind of funny to hear you say that.
yeah,
Like whenever I meet anybody who's would categorize themselves like that, they're just like, I just want to be left alone. I have my
yeah,
life. I have my friends. I do my
yeah.
own things.
That's it.
Um, And
I mean,
there's
I feel sorry for a lot of them because obviously they have a lot of trouble forming relationships, and especially of a romantic nature for obvious reasons. And they're very
hmm
quite lonely people and sad in some ways. But at the same time, a lot of them are very happy in their own skin because they do feel that that's the way they were supposed to be, and so be it.
Yeah, I would never kick them. I would never kick them while they're down, and I
No,
certainly wouldn't dictate to them what they must do or
absolutely
not
not.
do.
No, no. See what I mean,
Which,
though? Like I come across to people as a righty because I don't subscribe to LGBT movements and
hmm
and slogans, but one on one with each of these people, I have nothing but respect and love for them. So, I don't care. I don't care what your sexuality is. I don't care about anything. As long as you're a nice person, I couldn't care less.
yeah,
And yeah, trans people, they're interesting. They're very funny too. They've got the best senses of humor. They're really dry, like mega dry, and they've obviously had to develop a very thick skin. So
yeah,
yeah, you can actually go on pretty hard. They have a bit of fun with them. They're good fun.
yeah. I've no complaints with anybody I've ever met.
Yeah,
Um, a lot
I
of the
reckon.
stuff.
Mm,
Well, what do you? Let me pose this question for you. This
sure.
was not anything I wrote down, but it's something that's been on my mind a lot lately. There has been so much social engineering that's been happening,
Mm.
um, and it's not coming from them.
No, not
It's
at all.
and that's the funniest part about it is it's not coming from any of them. It's coming from like major corporations, and it's. I don't know if you have ever heard of ESGs, but they're called environmental social governance scores, and they're
Wow.
placed on corporations. And so what they do with these is they take your company and they go, okay, well, how woke are you? How environmentalist are you? Then they grade you based on that. So this is why we
Mhm.
have like trans M&Ms in the United States now. Um,
Great.
how much of that is going on in Australia, or what's your experience with noticing like?
I don't think just from the outsiders looking in, I don't think we're as far down the track as say North America from what I'm seeing. All right,
Mhm.
but it's here. It's well and truly here. And what I'm seeing is the engineering you're referring to. That's to me that's a state thing. Like that's the government sort of engineering it. So, and how they engineer it is through the educational institutions. So, I'll give you a great little story, short story. I've got a 13-year-old daughter, okay?
No,
And
perfect. We
she,
got lots of time.
yeah, well, let's just say that when she was 12, she confided in my wife that she is bisexual, 12 years old, right? And my wife was like, what do I make? What do I do with this information? So she's come to me and said, oh, Sienna May just told me that she's bisexual. And I said, really? I said, did you ask her any questions? And the answer was no, I didn't know what to say. So I got my daughter a little bit later. I waited, I didn't want to make it obvious that we'd just been talking about it. And I just asked her a couple of very simple questions. And I said, so tell me, Cinnamon, are you attracted to girls? She goes, no. I said, all right, well, are you attracted to boys? And she's like, ooh. So I just smiled to myself, walked away, went back to my wife and said, she's not bisexual. She doesn't know. She's basically, and this is what I told her. I said, she's sitting in a group of friends out in the schoolyard and they're talking about gender and how cool it is to be a member of the rainbow, and she's picked a team. That's what she's done. So that's where I get a bit annoyed because then I think it just fills young kids' heads. Look, if my daughter was 18 and saying this stuff to me, completely different story, and I would say, okay, because by that stage you would imagine she's had some sort of sexual awakening and really knows what floats her boat. But at 12, and I was right. I mean, my first assumption was because she even told me another time that she thought one of her friends was cool because she's non-binary. Another 12-year-old calling themselves non-binary. So you have to excuse the cough. I'm getting over COVID, mate. Told you about that, didn't I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad that you've actually well recovered.
Well, I
Um,
wouldn't say I'm over it yet. I'll see. I'm one of those people that whenever I get even just a cold, or anything worse than that, I always end up with a residual cough for a while. So I don't see this as any different to that. And the actual COVID, I reckon there was maybe one day out of the mix where I thought, well, yeah, this is pretty bad, but that's it. That was
yeah.
that was the extent of it. Look, I'm still got a bit of work to do to get rid of this cough, but Otherwise, yeah, reasonably fine.
I think that's important for people to kind of know too. Like there's a lot of jokes about COVID,
Hmm.
as you know, as you're a great manufacturer of them.
Yes.
Um, well,
Hmm.
I let me rephrase that: an epic manufacturer of them.
Well, let me just say, I don't even have to write the material; it's written for me, mate. I don't
Yeah,
have to write a thing. You know what I mean? Like I'm no genius. I just turn on the TV for 5 minutes. All right, there's 3 videos there, right there. Off we
yeah,
go.
because it's mostly TikTok, right? So
Yeah, it's
it's
all on TikTok. And I just say, you were talking about censorship before. I'm on my third account now.
oh wow,
Yeah, I had the first one got up to 112,000 followers, and I thought, oh, this is going well. Shut me down. And then the next one got up to nearly 10,000, shut me down again. What happens is I think it's a concerted effort, like to you get the bots who basically target your account.
yeah,
So they obviously once you get identified as a problem child, they gang up on you and they just keep reporting and reporting, and the TikTok algorithms just, oh yeah, he's been reported too many times, blah blah blah, off you go. And I've since learnt you're gonna think I'm wearing a tinfoil hat now. Okay, so strap yourself in, but it's actually a fact. Trust me on this. Particularly our Victorian State Premier, he has and when I say a massive amount of people working on his social media, I'm talking in the hundreds. Okay, and because his Facebook page, for example, understand that the state of Victoria has approximately 6.7 million people, right? His Facebook page has nearly 1 million likes. Just let that sink in for a moment, okay? So what he does, he spends literally hundreds of thousands of dollars on his social media, but he's also got them, you know, picking out dissenters as well. I mean, he's a full commie, our guy. He's, mate, Trudeau on steroids. He is, right, and
yeah.
uh, and I actually know that I am on a watch list, and all because I'm taking the piss out of him, and he doesn't like it. So he has big ears, so I even put these on to look like him. See,
Yeah.
and these are the best. These are the best $7 I've ever spent. Because see, Daniel Andrews is his name. I don't look much like him, but when I put those on, I'm the same age as him. I actually kind of look like him a little bit because he wears glasses as well. All right. So I do these videos with him, and apparently I even got
You're
a
gonna buy me
message
a
about a
litter.
year. I got a message from about a year ago from him, not him, but someone in his office, and this person actually said, just letting you know that Dan has seen your videos. We all think they're funny, but he doesn't.
Hmm.
And he is not someone who would like a joke about him. He is just a mad egomaniac. So yeah, he'd hate it. So yeah, I put it down to being on that watch list, having a lot of attention. And one of my videos went viral last year, big time. There was one video that got over like 10 million views, and it made it onto bloody Alex Jones show. Would you believe? Right? And anyway, to cut along, no, it was unreal. I was blown away. But to cut a long story short, Brendan, ever since then, yeah, every time I just stray that line a little tiny bit, I've got to be very careful about the way I make videos now. I
No.
used to be even more prolific. I used to make 3 or 4 videos a day. I've slowed down because I just know that they're going to get me.
Well, that's very what I would say is definitely noble. I one of my previous shows I spoke with somebody who makes kind of similar content to you.
Mm-hmm.
Very heavily political satire. It's more Ontario based for my
Yeah, yeah, of course.
province.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and one of the good points that we've made with that is I truly believe that humor and comedy is the number one way out of this. Like they're using propaganda on us and social engineering to a degree that we were only skimming the level on and talking
Mm-hmm.
about. Um, but when you start making fun of these people and you start pointing out things that are silly,
Mm.
things that don't make sense, things that should be questioned, that hurts the underbelly of the
Yeah.
beast so bad.
Yeah, like the best ones I reckon I like doing every time they update the rules and they come up with a whole slate of new regulations by which to mask wearing mandates, all that shit. Every time they introduce a new set of rules, I always make a special video,
Yeah,
pointing out the new rules, and they're always absurd. And those are the videos I noticed get the most views as well. So yeah, like, I'll say, for example, so you're allowed to go to restaurants, yes, but you got to wear a mask, yes, but not while you're eating, no. But while you're sitting down, you don't have to wear a mask, no. So there's COVID actually doesn't go below 4 feet, is that right? Like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, it's just too easy. It's too easy, right? So yeah, whenever I make those sort of videos, they seem to be popular. But the one that went viral, was one about the vaccines, and this was pretty early on too, when it really only just sort of started to roll out, and people were saying, "Are you going to get it?" And people were saying, "No, I don't want to. I want to wait." And people were saying, "Why do you want to wait?" And it was just a back and forth conversation, and that went all around the world. And look, I'll tell you a funny thing that happened too recently. I've been to a few of the rallies here in Melbourne. I haven't gone to all of them. I mean, look,
Okay.
I'm like yourself, Brendan. I've got young kids, and I've got to balance things right. But I've certainly been to a few of the protests. One in particular, I reckon there was at least 500,000 people in Melbourne. But of course, the media reported 10,000. Right? It's so, like, you just look at that and you just go, they don't even care that they know, we know they're lying, right? But while I was there, and bearing in mind that this was after I had my main account taken down and it had been gone for a couple of months, and I was trying to rebuild again and all that, I basically thought that, as far as my TikTok profile was gone, it had probably faded. Oh no, Brendan, I got mobbed everywhere I went. See, the thing about what I noticed, everyone was coming up to me, and you talked about how, what I do is noble. Well, I'm not saying that, okay, because I don't want you to think I think I'm some sort of saint or crusader, but I never woke up one morning and thought, oh, I want to be a nobleman, this is how I'm going to do it. No,
Yeah.
I just made videos, started taking the mickey and having a bit of fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cut a long story short, people are coming up to me and they're thanking me. They're saying, what you've done is amazing. You've kept me, you've lifted my spirits on some really dark days. It's great to be able to laugh about this stuff. Mate, I had no idea I was even doing any of that. Okay. And I, very humbled by that. It's also a bit daunting. You feel like you've got the weight of these people on you. So some days I was feeling like, oh, I've got to make a video now because, these people want one. You know what I mean? Like, I felt like I had to do it, right? But to cut a long story short, it was really gratifying. But yeah, it also told me, as you said earlier, that what amazing reach humor has. And you're right, the leaders, they can't handle it. And I'm quite in amongst all the protesters and all that. Yeah, I'm a borderline celebrity. And you know why that is, though, Brendan? There is no one else in the comedy community in Australia doing what I'm doing. Not one person. I'm it. And
Not one.
mate, they are so. I've seen some comedians maybe just make the odd.
Like, are they bought off or something? Like, it's like, so it's this goes back to like ancient times or medieval times. It was used to only be the jester who could poke fun of the king.
Yeah. No, I don't know what the story is, mate. Oh, look, I'm good friends, obviously, with a lot of them.
Yeah.
I mean, just thinking of my inner circle, they're just not the sort of like they're not political. Okay, so these guys aren't politically motivated, and even though my jokes, whilst obviously are political, they're also very COVID and questioning the narrative. These guys, like I could tell them about, anything to do with politics, and they wouldn't even know what I'm talking about. So they're not engaged in the same way that I am. That's the first part. And then as far as getting the vaccines have gone, they all pretty much just lined up and got them and didn't think anything of them. And in fact, one comedian came after me on social media and told me that no one would work with me if I don't get vaccinated because, we don't want to work with an anti-vaxxer, whatever. So what he doesn't know is, he's assuming I'm not vaccinated. I don't tell anyone. I haven't told anyone. For all everyone knows, I have had it. You know what I mean? And I actually can tell you this too, that and when I say I've researched, I mean, everyone's had a look and tried to figure out what's in these vaccines and whatnot. And there's a lot of bullshit and whatnot. I've been lucky enough to meet a guy who's in the medical field, who's actually analysed all three that we've got available under a microscope. And he actually told me if I was going to take one, that there was one that was he thought was okay. So in other words, if I wanted to go out and get one, I know which one I'd get. But the thing is, I don't share that information with people. I just keep it to myself, and whatever, but they're all assuming I'm not vaxxed, and I haven't told anyone. But the thing is, I've written a routine about my new following, which is very funny. I do this on stage. I said I've over the last 2 years, I've picked up a whole bunch of new fans by making content online, questioning the whole COVID response. And the great thing is I've got all these new fans, but the sad thing is none of them are allowed to go to my shows because none of them are vaccinated. Right? They're all anti-vaxxers that are following me now. So I've got all these new fans, and they can't even.
That's not true though, because there's a movement here, and it isn't anti-vaxxer. It isn't pro-freedom. It's the new anti-establishment underground.
Oh yeah, fantastic. Well, that's what we need to start pushing.
And it's not Neil Young. If you may have seen, Neil Young wants Spotify to take him off because you can pick between Joe Rogan or Spotify. It was like, all right, let's keep an old man who hasn't been relative in 40 years, or keep Joe Rogan.
Oh, here's the best part. Remember how I told you my video went on to Alex Jones?
Yeah.
It was Joe Rogan who sent it to him. How good's that? How good's that?
That's perfect.
I still remember Alex Jones, and he goes, I don't know if I can do his voice very well, but he goes, my good friend Joe Rogan sent me this tea. he goes, and I love this tea. He goes, very well-known Australian comedian Gabriel Rassi. I'm like, well, not that well-known. Well, don't know, but I mean, I have been doing stand-up for 25 years, but I wouldn't call myself a household name here. You know what I mean? Like, I haven't really cracked it onto TV, radio, and it's funny. It's funny when I think about it now, looking back on over the time I spent in my career, and it's kind of reflecting now in terms of how I, present myself on social media. I've never played the game. Do you know what I mean? I've never wanted to be in that inner circle. I've always just wanted to go do my gigs, go home. I've never wanted to ass kiss and end up on TV. You know what I mean? Like, I don't mind the idea of going on TV, but I'm certainly not going to, pucker up to get a deal. And I see the guys that have made it, and at some point somewhere, someone, signed a check with their soul on there, and my soul just can't be bought. And that's another reason why I've decided that's it. I'm going into politics. I'm going to have a crack because I know now more than ever.
Let's open that. So we talked a little bit about that in the green room here before we came on. So let's just start from the beginning. So what are you running for? Is it a federal or provincial party, or
I actually, as I said to you earlier, I actually did initially consider running in the federal election, but I felt the party that I was aligned with was not necessarily what I wanted, and also the idea of going into federal politics would have meant that I'd be interstate most of the time, and I don't think I want to do that when my kids are still only 9 and 13, So I have a friend who actually is a career politician who started a new party in Victoria called the Victorians Party. And yes, in November is our state election, so it's still a fair way off. I'm going to be running for the Western region of Melbourne and for the upper house, I believe he's told me. So, which is great, which means I don't know how your system works, but upper house voters, like I won't need as many votes to get elected. Put it this way, in the lower house, it would have been almost impossible because, you're up against 20, 30 candidates. In the upper house, there's a bit more leeway in terms of I've seen some candidates actually get an upper house seat with 10,000 votes. That's enough. That gets.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, it's a really convoluted system. I'm sure it's not too different to yours, but you do deals with this party, that party, and before and I think they do that so that to give the minor parties a chance, basically. So I'm hopeful that, I'd love to be in the upper house because that's where the deals get done. And some of the stuff that I'm going to tell you about something in a minute that's going to blow your mind, okay? But some of the stuff that gets passed, I would love to have been in that room at the time, where I would be the sort of person, would put my hand up, to speak, and the House Speaker would say, okay, member for Western Region Melbourne, you have the floor. What would you like to say? I would probably get on the mic and say, this is the dumbest pile of shit I've ever fucking heard in my entire life. Yeah, I'd probably get booted out, but that's the sort of stuff I would say. Now, what's going to blow your mind, and this is another reason why I just have to get in there and try and do something. There's a woman in the upper house in Victoria, and she's an independent. She represents a party, but it's basically her, called the Reason Party. But the name of her party used to be the Sex Party. That's what it was called originally. because this woman came from the sex industry, from the sex workers industry, right? So I don't know where the legalities of the sex work industry are in Canada, but in Australia they're pretty much legal, right? So you can go and pay for sex at a legal institution, right? So listen to this. Listen to the legislation that she got through, and the reason why it got through is because our premier needs her vote to get things done, right? So he's always doing deal with a few crossbenchers. He needs her, and she's one of his little slaves, right? So she proposed legislation which not only decriminalises all form of sex work, which is okay, it already is decriminalised, but you have to have a license to run a brothel, right? She's had that overturned. So now I can start a brothel in my house if I want to, right? So that's the first part of the legislation. Second part of the legislation is that regular screenings for the sex workers are no longer required. You heard? No longer required. So don't worry about getting a health check, honey. Oh, it gets even better, Brendan. You ready for this? Condoms are not required either if you don't want to. If you don't want to use a condom, you don't want to use a condom. So you don't have to have safe. You don't have to practice safe sex anymore. And it gets better. Here's the last one. This is the one. And this is the one that I want you to really hold on to your seat for. Okay. She says that if someone is infected, a sex worker is knowingly carrying an STI of any description, they can keep working. They can keep working. And you know why? You know why they can keep working, she said? Because to stop them from working, you ready for this? It would be discriminatory. Okay. So I know a couple of people. I know someone who owns one of the big brothels in Melbourne, right? I only know her before I clarify this to all the listeners out there, she comes and watches comedy, okay? So just letting you know. I'm not a regular, not Mr. Rossi, same girl. No, it's not that. So basically, she quoted this to me. She goes, they're sending prostitution back into the 70s. So this is the sort of stuff that I want to be in that room and go, like, do you not see a problem?
I have a quick question that maybe makes all of this even more absurd. Do you have to show your COVID pass to go?
Probably. Well, I mean, I imagine so. Yes, you have to show. Yes. So as long as you double jab, then you can double jab the girl as well. As long as you double jab, you can quadruple jab her.
I feel that there's a lot of moral implications where a lot of that would be outside of anything that I would do, but I mean, it just sounds unsafe altogether. And talk about preserving the healthcare system.
Well, that's what I'm saying. She's on the one hand saying that vaccine mandates are necessary to keep us all healthy, and then she's come out with that legislation. And it got through, Brendan. It's in. So what's happening is slowly it's being phased in bit by bit. So maybe by this time, the end of next year, that'll be the case. It's crazy. Mate, what about this? You're going to love this one. Another guy another one of his little buddies that votes with him all the time, right? He has a little independent party called the Animal Justice Party, this guy. His name's Andy Met. And so he's obviously a very heavily left-leaning guy, right? Yeah, he's a vegan, the whole bit. You know, he's all the way there. So when they closed all the shops, right? They closed everything. People couldn't even get a haircut, Brendan, right? So you couldn't even go to a hairdresser, right? No haircuts. But they let dog groomers open. So you could not get your haircut, but you could get your dog's haircut. I'm just, let that sink into me. I mean, he argued that it was a health issue because, when dogs' furs get clumpy and, they get a bit uncomfortable and it's, it can also harm them, but we couldn't get a haircut.
It's funny that people, and this ties in with something that's happened in Canada. Mm-hmm. People are so okay with running over everybody's rights, and these are just basic rights. Like, people say going to a restaurant is a privilege. Doing this is a privilege, but I don't think that's the case because back in the civil rights days or Jim Crow days in the United States, Rosa Parks made a big stand and didn't want to go sit at the back of the bus.
Yep.
Well, you know what? Sitting on the back of the bus was probably to them considered a privilege. We consider that discriminatory, but they consider it a privilege. So it's kind of sickening. But when it comes to animals, like man's best friend, don't get me wrong, I love dogs like a lot.
Same.
What's not to like about dogs? But in Quebec, the most probably authoritarian place in North America right now, where they had a curfew. I think it's still in effect until this weekend. They had a curfew. Everybody has to be home by 10 o'clock. There was an exception. There used to be an exception when the curfew was until 8 o'clock, that if you were walking your dog, you would be allowed to do so. However, when they brought the curfew back this year, they said you weren't allowed to walk your dog, that once a curfew is in effect, if you don't have reason to be outside, then you got to go home.
Wow.
People were up in arms against the government, and they freaked right out. And the government had... Yeah, so they're okay with being locked down in their entirety, but once it affects like the animal, which I don't know who walks their dog at 10 o'clock at night. I'm sure it's a very small minority, but it kind of makes you think that people are not okay with locking down dogs, but they're okay with locking down people. They're not okay with people having a haircut, but
I don't know if you saw one of the videos I made probably 3 weeks ago, but it was just a guy sitting there, and the first caption said, Victorians forced to get vaccinated or lose their job, and he's like, whatever. And then the next one was like, can't go out, can't leave home for any of the reasons, whatever. And then the next one was, can't leave your state, whatever. And then the next one was, they're going to vaccinate your children now. Who cares? And then the next one was 5 to 11-year-olds are also going to be vaccinated. Whatever. And then the next one, Novak Djokovic gets let into the country and he loses his mind. He goes, what are you doing letting Novak Djokovic in? He's not vaccinated. And the Victorians are all over social media saying what a prick Novak was. Mate, fucking idiots. Like, seriously. They get the shits over a number one fucking tennis player exercising his rights and also being invited to the country only to be told, your visa's all wrong. Like, mate, the Australian government made an absolute fool out of themselves. But in the same breath, like, whatever the case, like, I know both sides of the story, and there were some irregularities with Novak. So I'm not going to say he's squeaky clean, right? Because he probably embellished, maybe. But he would have done...
I think so.
He would have done whatever Tennis Australia would have told him to do. Right? So he would have gone along with their directives, and here we are now. And this is why he's putting in a $4 million lawsuit against the Australian government. Right? So, look, all I'm saying is that the way people responded to that, I'm like, is this what it takes to get you to, snap out of this shit? But anyway, look, I can see now, look, okay, so now they're rolling out boosters in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So you're talking about, you got all the data from all overseas, countries like Israel in their fourth booster, and they got record cases. And of course, they're still straight-faced saying this will stop the spread. Right? But still fucking like, this will stop the spread. And I'm like, okay, so I make videos, mocking that whole concept. And I get people coming into the hate box, mate. There they are. Like, you don't understand how vaccines work. And I said, no, dude. You don't understand how they don't work. like, you fucking moron. And I mean, look, the short story is, tell me a year ago, 1 year into the vaccine rollout, that any of us actually, even the most ardent of anti-vaxxer types, must have thought that we would be at least in a better place in terms of how many cases are running around or whatever, right? And now they're using this whole Omicron as like, oh, it's not as severe, mate. It's a fucking cold. Okay, that's what
Yeah.
it is. And you're putting it out there as something big, so that we can keep this nonsense going, right? So the good thing is, though, that I have noticed, like, so they've already mandated the booster for certain industries. Okay, so healthcare, a few of the essentials, right? So
Yeah,
now
you're just behind us still. Like we are we're rolling that's out, but nobody's taking it. Like the numbers are against it right
yeah.
now.
And I think that's slowly going to happen. Although there are a lot of, they used to say that Australia used to ride on the sheep's back because we're a big wool importer. My
Hmm.
fucking God, now that has taken on a whole new meaning, right? Because the sheep in this country is off the charts, right? There's more sheep than people, I'll tell you now. But the thing is, they're talking about, apparently they're in discussions with the retail and hospitality people. And, look, retail and hospitality is saying, how much more customers do you want us to lose? Because that's all that's going to happen. That's all it's going to. Because mate, you're trying to tell me that if I don't get my third shot, and I know that I can't go into that shot, do you think I'm going to go in it? I'm going to go whatever. I'm not going. I'm not going to
Yeah.
spend my money there. And if they're gonna check me, they can eat shit because I don't want to pay anything to these people, right? So, you know what I mean? Like, so yeah. So there is. It'll be interesting to see how those discussions play out. And then, of course, the 5 to 11-year-olds. It's not mandated yet, but we'll see. I've
Yeah.
got a 9-year-old. I don't want him to get it. So.
Well, funny you should mention the Novak story. And people got all outraged about that. I'm pretty sure at the Australian Open there was a cardiac arrest incident, was there
Yeah,
not?
I believe it. I know somebody collapsed. I don't know whether it was a cardiac arrest or whether she was just having palpitations or not. But yeah.
Like, is that causation or is that correlation?
Who knows, mate?
To be
You know,
determined. It's just speculation, but it's one of the things that concerns me. So there's been a refusal of a dialogue, and this is something that government needs to kind of hear everywhere, is that we need a cause and effect examination by a nonpartisan third party that examines the harm of everything that's been done, or the
Brendan,
benefit, or the benefit.
they don't care, Brendan. They don't care.
That's what needs to be done to move forward, though.
I know, but they don't care. And I cannot see anything more obvious. They
Yeah.
just don't care. Like if I went in there with my heart in my hands, saying, "Look what happened to me. I just took the jab, and my heart is here." They'd
Yeah.
be like, "Oh, well, you're going to get your second one." You know what I mean? Like they wouldn't give a shit.
No,
Like
they don't give a
literally
shit.
don't. I mean, this guy Andrews, mate, when I hear him speak, like he's that resolute. He's not even going to waver in the slightest. I mean, his words the other day on TV were, we're rolling out the boosters, and don't think of it as an option. Think of it. It's not something nice to have. It's something you have to have. And then how fun is this? Now, this is how stupid some of these premiers are. The West Australian premier, and by the way, he's still got his bloody state shut off to the rest of the country. He's got 3/5 of nothing as far as cases go. They're freaking out over there because they've got 10 or 12 cases a day. Over here, we've got like 20, 30,000, right? But over there, he's got 12 cases a day, and he's got his borders shut because he doesn't want to let any dirty Victorians or New South Welshmen in, right? So he's on TV the other day. This is what he said. Ready for this? He goes, the science has, I love when a sentence starts with the science, by the way. It's always great. The science says that if you've had 2 shots, you've only got 4% protection from Omicron. However, if you get the 3rd shot, it jumps up to 64%. What the fuck are you talking about, mate? They are the same fucking injections. They're not even changing them. Like, there is one in the pipe works for Omicron, apparently from Pfizer, but that'll just be some, they might put in a bloody pinch of salt in it. Who knows, right? The fact of the matter is that they aren't any different. So, okay, sure, it'll stimulate your antibodies again, but for how long, champ? Week, 2 weeks, and then what? What an idiot. That's the sort of crap that people are being told. And, of course, the morons are going, oh, wow. Like, they're not sitting there going, hang on, what? 4%? 4%? No, they're going, oh, 64%. Oh, that's a bit better. You know what I mean? 4%.
Yeah.
Aren't you focusing on the 4%?
You're right. You can't write this stuff because it
That's what I'm saying. I can't come up with material that good.
yeah.
Look, you know what I mean? I'm not that clever. I don't have that intelligence, mate. I have to rely on the morons of the world to write for me. You know, this is the thing. And this is a
Yeah.
guy that, oh, you're going to love this. This is the funniest thing ever. He recently put out a video because there's a pretty large Indigenous community in Western Australia. I mean, most states are definitely represented, but Western Australia's got quite a big one. And they are concerned that the take-up of the vaccine is not big over there. So he thought it would be a good idea to get an Aboriginal elder and him make a video to talk to them. And what it basically was, this is the dumbest thing ever. What it basically was him talking in English. Now, Aboriginal language is like they've got hundreds of different languages, right? But they also have their own kind of English, so to speak. It's a very slang way that they talk, right?
Yeah.
So basically, he was talking about getting vaccinated, and this lady was translating it in English again, but with Aboriginal words thrown in. So, like, he would say, "Hi, I'm the Premier of Western Australia, Mark McGowan," and she would say something like, "Yeah, this is the Premier of West Australia. He's the boss." You know what I mean? And then full on came across as the most like racist thing you've ever seen, because it's like saying to the Aboriginal people, you wouldn't understand a proper spoken white man talking to you, so I've got this lady to talk in your sort of, jargon, so you'll get it a bit better. And I'm like,
Big time.
I'm watching, and yeah, and they put it
Actually,
out there.
Matt Walsh of the Daily Wire. He's one of Ben Shapiro's
I follow
fellows.
Matt Walsh.
Yeah.
Follow Matt. Yeah.
Yeah, he does that. So he took that video clip and he examined it, and he looked straight faced into the camera. So not only am I a top LGBT author, children's author, but I also speak Aborigine. I could imagine that. I could imagine they don't have words like vaccine, COVID. Like it
That's
probably
about
doesn't.
it. Yeah, but they can say it.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
exactly.
There's a great, and I've just come across him. There's an Aboriginal guy making really funny videos on TikTok, and he's doing stuff like, how funny is this one? He goes, he was with a bunch of his Aboriginal friends, all dark. I mean, they call themselves black fellas. That's what they call themselves, right? So he goes up to a bunch of his black fella mates and he goes, "Hey, did you hear the news, boss?" And they go, "What?" He goes, "Apparently, we're not going to be allowed to go in any bars or nightclubs." And they all just start laughing because they're not allowed in anyway. I mean, the guy's great. I even sent him a note yesterday to say, "Mate, I'm loving your stuff. It's really good." But he's also really good in the sense because, so obviously there's a real us and them kind of mentality, and he talks about how bad. He's talking about the segregation that the government are now doing through unvaccinated and vaccinated, and he's relating it to his situation, saying how wrong it is. He's really funny, but he's also got a very, very strong message. I love it. So
There's multiple levels in there.
Absolutely, no, but the guy's so. But I love, and once again, he's doing it with humor, which is terrific. Yeah, it really hit me. I saw it. I've started following him. It's great. Yeah, so.
The more this stuff keeps happening, the more it's going to come. So before we kind of go into a wrap up here, there's kind of one more rabbit hole I wanted to kind of go down with you.
Yep.
So Boris Johnson in the UK, he's saying so they've removed all of the mandates in the United Kingdom.
Yep.
Canada, even though we have thousands of truckers, semi-truck drivers, encroaching on the Ottawa capital, our prime minister here is steadfast.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Biden doesn't look like he's changing his opinion anytime soon. And if he does, it would probably be in his best interest to do it closer to the next election. Then he could say, "We are going to end
Mm.
all the regulations," and then
Well, they got the midterms coming up, haven't they? So
they have a midterm coming up. But when he does it, he'll say, "Oh, see, look at that! I've defeated COVID." Like that's how they're going to spin it, right?
yeah.
Um, is your government staying steadfast, or is it backing down at this point?
Well, the only thing they're not really doing, which is sort of, look, they made well, you can't trust a commitment made by any governments anymore, I guess, but
Yeah,
they did sort of say that once we got to 80% or more vaccinated levels, that they were never going to lock us down again. So they haven't done it. But the thing is, we've never had a caseload like this. Like we were locking down with 20 cases.
yeah,
Seriously. Right? Now we got as high as 50,000 cases in a day, right? And they're not locking down. So we're all scratching our head going, what the hell, you know? And they're sitting there going, oh, but we've got, not many hospitalizations. I mean, there's still, 1,000 in Victoria, a couple thousand in New South Wales. There's quite a few people in hospital, not massive levels, and it's manageable, you know. But like I said to you before, Daniel Andrews was on the TV the other day talking to boosters is like, this is the way out. Nothing's changed. Do you know what I mean? Like, we still got to do this, So yeah, and the only, I'd say that the federal leader, Prime Minister, who to me seems pretty impotent anyway, in terms of how this is all being playing out, he seems pretty hell bent on trying to get the economy back on track, but at the same time, what he says behind closed doors is anyone's guess, because he actually said on TV that, a month ago, that he thinks the mandates are wrong. He actually said those words. And yet they're all still in place. So, do you know what I mean? New South Wales is actually a little bit more lenient. Like, it's probably a better state to be living in right now, because I don't think right now that the unvaxxed, look, there are some restrictions on the unvaxxed in New South Wales, but nothing like what here. I mean, here they pretty much can't do anything, and they're still not able to work. The unvaxxed are able to work in New South Wales now. So there is some, there's some areas that are sort of, there's definitely cracks, but I mean, if you saw how hard and you've got to remember, our leader is, our Prime Minister is he's the leader of the federal Liberal Party, the Liberal National Party, right?
yeah.
So the state leaders that are the opposition leader, the opposition party, the Labor Party, they're the ones, funnily enough, who seem to want to run their own race and, gets better, love to apportion blame on the federal government. So, for example, one of the problems we've got now is they've gone finally, after all this time, they've decided to allow people to test themselves with the rapid antigen tests, right? And they're claiming, oh, the federal government never ordered us any, because no one can get them. You can't get them. They're nowhere, right? And the fact of the matter is, and one of the benefits of me doing what I've been doing over the last year is I've had all these really interesting people coming into my inbox telling me information. Some of it is rubbish, but a lot of it is really good. And I can tell you that whilst this Premier is sitting here telling everyone in the state that there's no rapid antigen test because the federal government didn't order any or didn't do it quick enough, there's a suburb in the southeastern area of Melbourne called Dandenong, which is a big warehouse where they store a lot of their shit, and there are 3 million rapid antigen tests sitting in there, just gathering dust.
Wow.
Right? Mate, I shit you not. If I told you how I knew that, you're going to go, mate, you're a freak. But the fact of the matter is, I actually know someone who knows the owner of the building.
I think that's really good enough. I mean, well, here's the thing.
I want to make a TikTok about it, but I want the guy that owns that building to let me in so I can show people. But I don't know if he'll be able to do that.
Who knows? You know what?
If you let me in, I'll do it. Mate, I'm ready.
It's just like how we've met. It's like, if you don't ask, you don't
exactly
see.
Right. Exactly right. Exactly
just
right.
ask and see what happens.
You're about the fourth podcast I've been asked on.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna.
Yeah, it's been great. Like, another one from Canada, one from the US, and a few local ones. Yeah.
That's amazing.
I mean, I don't see myself as some sort of superstar. So this is always good, and I like to talk about this stuff. So
yeah.
I'm always going to say yes.
Well, I think it's very important because it's very clear you're paying attention.
No,
Um,
100%.
when you're paying attention, like you're going to be in a better position to kind of talk about big ideas, like especially like I like to, and
Mm.
clearly other people are doing. So it this is
The problem is, and you'll probably experience this too, Brendan, is when you are paying attention and people aren't paying attention, they see you as crazy. I'm
yeah
like, mate, I'm paying attention. You're not, and I'm crazy. Like that's the thing. But I think one thing that's really important that I wanted to talk to you about, and I think I mentioned this to you in our correspondence earlier,
yeah
was I sort of want to set the record straight too about these so-called camps in Australia.
yeah. I was actually wanted to bring that up with you too. So
Well, this is all I know at this stage. Okay, I mean, for a start, there's only really one that's actually in use at all, and that's in the Northern Territory. It's called Howard Springs. That's always been there, though. That was a refugee detainment centre, always was, right? So
mhm.
they've converted that now into the COVID sort of stay, right? Now, this notion that people are being told around the world that people are getting dragged to these places, it's not happening. It's really not happening. I mean, I'll give you an example, okay? There was a gentleman in the Northern Territory who was tested positive for COVID. Now, Northern Territory, not a big state, by the way. It's not heavily populated, maybe 300,000, 400,000 people tops, right? It's not a
I
big.
think it's just like more or less wide open there, eh?
It is. Mate. It's mostly desert, But yeah, you got Darwin, you got a few towns, but that's it. It's not a heavily populated area, right? But there
Yeah,
are a lot of Indigenous communities in remote areas as well, and they are maybe being overzealous about it, but they are very much worried that if it gets into the Indigenous communities, it'll wipe them out because they're already, probably not in the best shape as it is, right? So they
yeah,
are very vigilant on trying to ensure that these guys that live in those communities are sort of, like say for example, this one guy in particular was COVID positive. So they said to him, you have to stay home, for whatever it was, 14 days at the time, right? And
yeah,
of course, they go there the next day and he's not there, right? And they find him, down the street and like, mate, you've got to go home, right? So he goes back home. Then they go the next day and he's gone again. So these guys aren't doing or weren't doing what they were supposed to do. So then the third time they go to pick him up, this time they've said, mate, we're going to take you to Howard Springs because obviously we can't trust you to do it. So then, of course, that gets reported, or things like that gets reported as, oh, they're taking Indigenous people away to these communities against their will. But you've got to understand there's always more context. In saying that, I still don't like that they even did that, right?
no,
Let me just state that for the record right now. But in terms of the way it gets reported, it's like firstly, they're reporting people that aren't even COVID positive getting dragged away. Well, that's not true. And they're also reporting that it's specifically targeted at the Indigenous community. And in a sense, to some extent, they probably are a little more vigilant to those guys for the reasons I've outlined, but they're doing it to whites as well if they're doing the wrong thing. Do you know what I mean? So,
yeah.
so that's in the Northern Territory anyway. That's not across the board. Victoria has a detainment centre that's not even, I don't even know if they've laid down the slab yet. Like they're building one. I don't even know if they've started.
Oh
Okay,
wow.
there's one in Queensland, which I think is under construction as well, or two in Queensland, and as far as I know, there's one in New South Wales. My understanding is that look, we don't know what nefarious purpose they may really have. I'm open-minded to anything, but at the end of the day, they're quarantine facilities exclusively for travellers that are supposedly coming home. At no stage has it been suggested and they haven't taken anyone's kids away or anything like that. So I want to knock that on the head. But by the same token, the first time anything like that happens, you'll be the first to know. Don't worry. But
Yeah,
yeah, I just think that the way that see, I'm like, I get really angry with the media misreporting. I get really angry with the government's lies. But I'm just as angry when people on our side make shit up too. I
me,
hate it.
I absolutely agree with you on that. Canada does have. We had the same thing. So people arriving by plane have to. Well,
Mm,
let me backtrack a little bit. It started off in the beginning where they had contracted a camp COVID, so to speak,
mm-hmm.
which I believe is a facility that is still is up. I don't know what they're doing there. Nobody really knows what they're doing there, which is gross in and of itself. We're just gonna
Mm-hmm.
keep this camp around here, you know,
Yep.
just in case we need it, or
Yeah, that is daunting, and I agree with you, Brendan. I mean, like,
yeah,
what are you going to use it for in the future? I mean, it can be argued though that it may always have a use of some sort. But the fact of the matter is, like, let's say that the Victorian one gets put up, and they start implementing it.
yeah,
I think the max it's going to be able to fit is about 1,500 people. I mean, like, to be honest with you, 1,500 people out of 6.7 million. I think there's going to be a lot more, anti-vax types that would, be born. There'd be probably 1 million people that haven't had the vaccination here in Victoria, despite the figures. I mean, I don't believe these 94% reports. That's the biggest load of horseshit I've ever seen. I know that
yeah.
that's not true. So,
But it's just like them saying, oh, 80% will give everybody their freedom back.
yeah. Then they ended up making, they made it 90% in the end, Brendan. They said when it got to 80%, we'll just go to 90 actually.
Yeah, that's the same thing everywhere's done. It's the ever moving goalposts, we would call that. Funny you should mention something about the fake news, and I do have an excellent fake news example to share with you. So I'm just going to share my tab here.
Yep.
All right, can you see that?
Yep.
All right, so this the headline here.
Oh, that's gold. That is gold. How
Truckers.
funny is
So just for people who are listening, it's a CBC News radio, CBC News article, and it does state here,
God.
truckers protest dangerous conditions on BC Road Highway.
I can't write anything funnier than that.
No,
That is hilarious.
This is how implicit and against us that they are. Like this
Wow.
is a
But
psyop.
surely people are going to see through that. Come on. Even the dummies are going to go, come on. You're not going to get 71-kilometre long trail lines for a pothole.
Clearly, this is a psyop. Like I have no other way. I have no other.
That's so funny. You should make a TikTok about that, Brendan. Post it. That's hilarious, man.
I'll send you the link.
Mate, that is actually send it to me because then I'll make one. That is the funniest thing I've ever seen.
I am not with the TikTok so much. I found you on Facebook, believe it or not.
That's true. Yeah, I know. I remember. Yeah, TikTok's just got a good app to use because it's just so easy, but it's also so easy to get bloody banned as well. That's the problem.
Well, it is
look, I don't get much stuff banned on Facebook. I mean, Facebook's pretty bad too, but the only time I get in trouble on Facebook is when I get into bloody commenting stoushes with people. So I've just got to stop doing that, and I'll never get banned because my content never gets taken down.
Yeah, that would be just about it. I mean, there's always going to be those people a part of the gender brigade that'll be like, this is offensive.
I like the fact that they come on and say, this is offensive, you old fat cunt. That's what they say. I'm like, hello, what? Like, literally said those words to me, this guy. He goes, this is offensive, you old fat. I'm like, you're worried about me offending you and then you offend me with that personal comment. My joke wasn't nothing to do with you. You've gone... Anyway. And a guy was telling me the other day what an idiot I was because I was questioning the vaccines and he will never get COVID because he's vaccinated, he said. These are his words. And that I'm old and overweight, which, I mean, a couple of kilos, shit, man. Not that bad, am I?
You're very handsome, I would say.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm 50 years old. Like, I'm 50 years old, but I'm hardly like side of a house. I've been 15 kilos heavier than this, So to be called fat is like, really, man? I've been working hard, man. Right? And the thing is, like, he's gone the man, and all I've done is made a video about two guys who both got COVID. One's vaxxed, one's not, and they both had the same result. That's the joke. That was the exact joke. And he took offense to that and then decided to get personal with me because I wouldn't listen to his little,
Yeah, I guess that's one more thing we should talk about. Like I mean, I feel like I could talk to you for hours, but I don't want to stress out people's attention spans too much.
Yeah, I'm the same. Less is more sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. Do you think that for a lot of these people who are have taken basically the fear pill,
Yep.
where do you think that's going? Like, do you think there's an end in sight for them, or?
Only if, only if and when it affects them directly. Okay, so the minute, for example, they lose cash, job, something, then they might go, oh. So now, I guess you could argue being in the entertainment industry, which was obviously one of the hardest hit, although
Yeah.
you're going to laugh at this. You will laugh at this. I'm a mad keen golfer. Like I play 2-3 times a week. Very love the game with a passion, right? When this pandemic first started and all the bans started coming in, right? Pretty much they started banning golf in Victoria as well because apparently golfers don't know how to social distance, even though we're never next to each other. But that's another story, right? And it was only in Victoria that golf was banned, right? And all the other states were still allowed to play. They had modified rules, you weren't allowed to do this, you weren't allowed to do that, but they were still allowed to play. So you're talking about how when these people will wake up. Well, this was like March, April 2020 when this happened. I was awake straight away because he took my golf away, right?
Yeah.
So but I started up a Facebook page, and it simply was called Dan Andrews Time to Let Victorians Play Golf Again. And I blinked and it had 3,500 followers. And then that's when it all started. Then from that moment onward, I thought, okay, not that I was trying to garnish a following. I just realized that people were engaging with this, and I've got a platform, I'm going to use it. That's pretty much where I went with it, right? And what happened, gradually and naturally after that. But yeah, that's so these people you're referring to who still seem to be like going along with it, mate, they're probably, maybe they're not going out as much, okay, sure, but they're probably okay with that. But they've probably got their paycheck sitting in the bank every week, and they're probably like even saving money at the moment because they're not going out as much. So they're probably looking at the situation and going, no, it's not bad. Mate, working from home, oh, look, yeah, I can do that. Actually, I don't know why we didn't do this sooner. So all of a sudden, their life's not too bad. And come the weekend, they watch TV, whatever they do, life's relatively normal. It's only when your life is turned on its head, then you might start to go, well, hang on a minute. Now, for a lot of people, that's happening in different ways, though. Like, say, for example, people now starting to go, shit, man, I've taken 2 of these shots. I've done everything that was asked of me. Now they want me to get another one. And there's cases coming out of our bums everywhere. What's going on? That's when they start to wake up. And so we just have to wait. But some of them won't, mate. Some of them will just,
And that's coming in one way or another. There's record inflation for everybody. Like, there's lots to go around.
Yeah,
and
so that it's going to hit at some point it's going to hit them. How they respond is another story. I mean, you still got the people saying, oh, but it's a pandemic. I get it. But end of the day, look, when they come to me and attack me, which is often, it happens every day, mate. I'm like, do you understand humor? That's what I say to these people. Do you understand I'm joking? Like, because you know what they report my videos for, Brendan? Authenticity and integrity. That's the banner it comes under. And so now basically what Facebook and TikTok are doing are fact-checking jokes now. So a joke has to be factually correct and accurate now. So if I make a joke about, I don't know, say I made a joke about Donald Trump and said he weighs 120 kilos and it turns out he's 130 kilos.
Yeah.
They could take it down now because it's incorrect.
You are fake news.
Well, mate, as far as the Boris Johnson situation though that you mentioned earlier, though, I will say one last thing about him.
Mm-hmm.
There's talk, and once again, you asked me about the rabbit hole here, but have you heard the whispers going around how they're this movement where people are going up to police and authorities and serving them with papers and stuff? It's happening in the UK.
Yeah, I've had. There's groups in Canada that are serving public health officials and government officials paperwork to their door. And then the government go, how dare you do this? And it's like, look, you guys have been in people's lives, like right down to the health minister telling you how to, you lay with people. It's like you shouldn't have sexual intercourse without your mask. So that is essentially the government telling you what you can and can't do in your bedroom, which is
Doesn't everyone wear a mask during sexual intercourse? I always have.
Well, I'm sure you do. You might get off on it, but not me.
Well, no, I don't get off on it. I just don't want them to know who I am.
I don't know, but either way, from my position, it's when the government. That's the government seeping into every aspect of your life, and then when the
So,
citizens
but
return the favor, they get mad. Wow.
but someone has put forward the idea that Boris knows he's on notice. That's why he's rolled back the restrictions. They reckon they've gone after him. This is what I'm hearing anyway.
That
I
could
don't
be.
know how true it is, mate. This is what I'm saying. Like every time I hear something that I want to be true, I even doubt that now. So
Yeah, I'm unfortunately skeptical about everything, but
but then
for
they
the
reckon
meantime,
the climate lockdowns are coming now, though, they reckon. So, once this all gets done, then we'll be in climate lockdown.
that's the word out on the street. I'll believe it when I see it, but
Yeah, it won't
which
happen.
yeah, I would like to leave the floor for you. So, Gabriel Rossi, where can people check you out? You have lots of material out there.
Come on TikTok, Gabriel Rossi Comedy #2 now. Well, and see how long that account lasts for. And, Facebook, of course, Gabriel Rossi Comedian pages. And, yeah, I mean, I am still doing live shows at the moment in front of reduced audience numbers for obvious reasons. But, look, at the end of the day, you come on any golf course 3 times a week. Well, I've got my handicap back down to 5 at the moment, so I'm going okay. I'm playing pretty well. So
Absolutely beautiful. So, with that being said, thank you so much for being on our show here today. I'm just going to do a quick wrap up.
I appreciate the fact that you guys are taking interest in my stuff too. I really do.
No, you are a beacon of common sense in the world, I would say. And
Don't tell my wife that; she will refute that big time.
okay, yeah, I won't tell her.
Please, trust me, she's a police officer, man.
Oh, that's trouble.
Yeah, it is, and I love being married to a police officer because you can actually call your wife a pig.
I absolutely love you, my friend. And
Thank
with
you
that,
very much, man.
with that being said, everybody, thank you for tuning into the Flow of Discourse. And as always, my name is Brendan Kennedy. Be sure to like and subscribe to my channel. And if you have any interesting stories, be sure to email me at theflowofdiscourse@gmail.com. With that being said, stay safe out there.